As Jamaica celebrates Emancipation Day on August 1st and Independence Day on August 6th, the island nation does more than just reflect on its past. It confronts a powerful paradox of its present. This year's festivities are unfolding amid rising anticipation for a soon-to-be-called general election, one in which the two main political contenders embody the very roots of the island's colonial and post-colonial legacies. On one side stands Prime Minister Holness, the current leader of the governing Jamaica Labour Party JLP, a descendant of formerly enslaved Africans, born into the post-independence generation and the first Jamaican Prime Minister to be born after August 6, 1962. On the other side is Mark Golding, president of the opposition People's National Party PNP, a man of British Jamaican heritage, hailing from a prominent family with ancestral links to Britain's colonial elite. Some reports and records link Golding's lineage to families who may have been beneficiaries of slavery and its spoils, either directly or through inherited privilege during colonial rule, as Jamaica raises its black, green, and gold flag to mark its freedom from slavery and sovereignty from colonial rule. The country is simultaneously being asked to choose between the distinct national legacies, one that emerged from chains and one built from empire. The question begs, what would Jamaica's freedom fighters, its Maroons, its rebels, its abolitionists, and its independence architects think of this moment, and who would they choose to lead the future of the island they fought so hard to liberate? Jamaica's history is soaked in the trauma of the transatlantic slave trade. For over 3 centuries, the island was a brutal British plantation colony, where African ancestors were kidnapped, shipped en masse, and enslaved under inhumane conditions. By 1834, when emancipation was finally declared by the British Crown, not as an act of compassion, but under global pressure, over 300,000 enslaved Africans had been subjected to a system that treated them as property. Independence in 1960 came not through benevolence, but through generations of resistance, revolts, intellectual assertiveness, and political maneuvering by Jamaicans who believed full freedom meant self-determination, black leadership, and national pride. So when Jamaicans gather each year at Emancipation Park and across the island in traditional dress, singing folk songs and honoring ancestors who fought in the Baptist War, or led Maroon rebellions, or signed independence documents, it is not just celebration, it is a political and spiritual renewal rooted in identity, legacy, and justice. The upcoming elections will undoubtedly focus on the typical campaign topics: crime, the cost of living, education, healthcare, job creation. But there is a deeper undercurrent in voters' hearts and minds, that of national identity. Holness, a product of Spanish Town and the child of parents from humble backgrounds, symbolizes for many the modern Jamaican dream, a black Jamaican rising through ambition, discipline, and public service to lead the country on the global stage. Mark Golding, with his pale complexion, British surname, and elite social status, is viewed by some as a contradiction in a society still grappling with colonial inequality and colorism. Though legally and culturally Jamaican, his ancestry has reopened conversations about whether Jamaica has truly freed itself of colonial shadows, or whether power still quietly resides in the hands of those linked to imperial rule, while race alone isn't destiny. In a country still healing from the legacies of white supremacy, plantation power structures, post-slavery trauma, and systemic class divide, it presents a sociopolitical quandary. What does it mean, symbolically and spiritually, for an emancipated people to choose their descendants of enslavers to lead them? What would the ancestors say? If Jamaica's liberation icons such as Paul Bogle, Nanny of the Maroons, George William Gordon, and Marcus Garvey were alive today, how might they interpret this moment? Nanny, the legendary Maroon queen who led guerrilla resistance against British soldiers, undoubtedly envisioned a Jamaica where Africans ruled themselves, free of British dominion in both politics and psychology. Marcus Garvey, the father of black consciousness and Pan-African pride, urged Jamaicans to emancipate yourselves from mental slavery and resist the pull of Eurocentric power structures and ideals. Bogle and Gordon, martyrs of rebellion and sacrifice, pushed for equity and black political representation, believing that only a people with shared historical scars could fight for justice on behalf of the oppressed. They would not necessarily choose a leader based on race alone, but on the historical understanding of who benefits from colonial systems and who has lived their consequences. They would ask, which leader understands the soul of this country? Who embodies the struggle, the pride, and the hope of black Jamaica? It must be said, Mark Golding is a competent, experienced public servant with a strong record on finance and legislative matters. His supporters argue that focusing on his ancestry distracts from his capabilities, and that Jamaica's maturity as a democracy is shown through an electorate that can look beyond skin tone and heritage. That's not untrue, but neither is it naive to ask questions about what leadership represents. In a formerly enslaved nation, in a year marked by emancipation and independence celebrations, the link between ancestry and authority cannot go ignored. At a time when global movements, from the decolonization of education to reparations for slavery, are gaining steam, Jamaica's electoral decisions will echo loudly across diasporas and developing countries confronting similar legacies. Electing a leader is not just about economics and crime. It's about direction, identity, and projection on the world stage. This election offers Jamaicans more than a civic choice. It delivers a moment of reckoning, identity, and historical clarity. Jamaica, at this unique intersection of ancestral trauma and national pride, will not remain still. The choice will be made, and in that choice, Jamaica will reveal which story it wants to carry forward, the story of a nation fully stepping into the shoes sown by its enslaved ancestors, choosing to be led by those who walk in their legacy, or the story of reconciliation without reflection, where the privileges of the past can be repackaged as modern leadership. This emancipation and independence season, Jamaicans are being asked to vote not just with their heads, but with memory, wisdom, and courage. Who will you choose? Share your thoughts below, and as always, we appreciate when you like, subscribe, and share this video. Thanks for watching, and see you on the next one.